Good morning, everyone. Once again, this is Rav Jared Anstandig, and this is part 2 of our 3-part series exploring the mitzvah of lo titgodadu from the Torah to the rabbis. Now, yesterday we saw that there were 2 potential interpretations of the mitzvah of lo titgodadu, according to Rashi, Rashbam, Ibn Ezra, as well as the apparent context and meaning of the verse. The prohibition of lo titgodadu is that we are not allowed to engage in bodily self-destruction as an act of mourning a loss. Yet, according to the Talmud, we saw that this mitzvah is a prohibition against forming factions. And the question we left off yesterday was, how do these 2 interpretations get along? Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, 15th century Constantinople, argues the following about these 2 rival interpretations. He says, lo titgodadu lo tasu agudot. That which the Talmud says about this verse, eino ella derech drush ba'alma. That is simply a rabbinic explanation. Now, this expression that he uses, drush ba'alma, that's his way of saying, look, this is a nice idea. You want everyone to get along. It's a nice idea. It's maybe even a very important idea. But that's not what the Torah really means. The Torah is really and truly talking about rituals of mourning that are prohibited. And the rabbis, well, they had this other idea, and they decided, maybe because the words sounded nice, they decided to just link it up here in the Torah. But that is not actually what the Torah means. Said differently, this prohibition against forming factions and groups is a rabbinic prohibition. It's midirabanan. It is not a biblical one. Rabbi Yehuda Loeb, known as the Maharal of 16th century Prague, in his commentary called the Gur Aryeh, takes strong issue with Mizrahi's comment. Umasha pirish haraim she'eno ela drasha be'alma. That which Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi says that it is simply a rabbinic explanation. Ze eno. That is not correct. Ki drasha gemura min hatorahu. In actuality, this is a bona fide interpretation of the Torah. According to the Gur Aryeh, the rabbis weren't simply hanging their idea on a verse in the Torah. The rabbis were telling us that these words, lo titgodadu, literally mean that we may not create divisions. In other words, this prohibition is not rabbinic, as Mizrahi would have us believe. This prohibition is deoraita. This prohibition is biblical. And not that the Gur Aryeh needs any of my support at all, but Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein of 20th century Lithuania stresses that the word titgodadu actually has 2 meanings. Yumatzinu belashon zeh shnei amuvanim. We find 2 meanings of the word titgodadu in the Bible itself. We have one instance in the Sefer Malachim, Vayikre'u bekol gadol vayitgodadu kamishpatam b'charavot v'ramachim. So these idolaters, they shout louder and they gash themselves with knives and spears. Here, vayitgodadu clearly means to cut. And yet, in Sefer Yirmiyahu, chapter 5, verse 7, the end of the verse, Uveit zonah yitgodadu. There are these people, they commit adultery, and they went trooping to the harlot's house. There, yitgodadu doesn't mean to cut. There, yitgodadu means to form a troop, to form a group together. The Torah Tamima here is pointing out that the rabbinic interpretation that we saw in the Talmud, that titgodadu means factions or troops, is not some far-fetched, fanciful interpretation of the word, nor is it an additional layer that the rabbis placed onto the text. In fact, if you know the Bible well enough, you realize that this rabbinic interpretation is arguably just as legitimate as the so-called pshat one, which was the surface meaning of the text. What initially appeared to be a machloket, a disagreement between these 2 interpretations, Ibn Ezra and others on one side, the rabbis on the other, is really no disagreement at all. Sometimes words have 2 meanings. In the spirit of the harmonization of the Torah Tamima, I leave you with another question. What's so wrong with there being a disagreement, right? We know 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Whether you're the Gur Aryeh and you say that this prohibition is biblical, or whether you're Mizrahi and you believe that it's rabbinic, still, what's the big problem? What is so bad about a diversity of opinions that makes it, at least in certain circumstances, a violation of lo titgodedu? Think about it. And in the meantime, thank you so much for learning together today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow again for our 3rd and final installment of exploring lo titgodedu from the Torah to the rabbis. Have a great day.